A 14-year-old boy named Pyle Wall walks around as he gathered enough food for the day. He is an orphan and a drifter who aimlessly drifts around. Pyle Wall searches for a place to spend the night when he sees a strange man who stares at him, and he wonders who the man is. Later, Pyle Wall wakes up and is unable to see but realizes he is in a dark room and isn't blind. Pyle Wall is exhausted and unable to move as he has tears in his eyes. He wonders why he is in his strange predicament and remembers the food he gathered. He remembers the strange man who says he looks useful and says he must have something to do with why he is in the darkness. Pyle Wall says the man must have a goal or an ulterior motive because he didn't kill him. Time passes, and Pyle Wall wonders if he is still conscious or if he passed out. He laments because he is lonely and continues saying his name and his deceased parents' name. He realizes he might die of starvation and wonders why the strange man trapped him. He bites his lower lip as he panics but regains movement in some parts of his body. Pyle Wall regains some of his senses and moves his hands and feet around. He perceives a damp smell and says it is easier to breathe. The ground beneath him is cold and he realizes he is underground. Pyle Wall hears the sound of water dropping around him and realizes water is in the room. He says he must drink and struggles to move his body. He motivates himself as he crawls on the ground and says he is almost there. Pyle Wall moves slowly as he is in pain and breathes heavily as he says he must survive. He is hell-bent on surviving and eventually reaches the wall. He realizes it is a stone wall and is rock solid. Pyle Wall accidentally cuts his hand as he moves it on the wall and says there's no use in his effort. He lies on the floor as he gives up and a strange figure emerges. Pyle Wall wonders who it is as it stands beside him. Pyle Wall sees himself standing before him and the person asks him why he is trying so hard to survive. It asks him what is great about his worthless life and tells him to give up. Pyle Wall's image says he will be at peace if he gives up, and Pyle Wall asks if he will really be at peace. The image is surprised and Pyle Wall says he must survive because he won't be at peace if he dies. Pyle Wall says he won't be at peace if he doesn't stab the person that put him in his current situation and puts revenge as his reason to survive. The image asks Pyle Wall if he will really have his revenge and smiles as Pyle Wall says he will never give up. Pyle Wall suddenly wonders if he was dreaming and sits up. He motivates himself as he says he must survive and moves to the stone wall. He touches the wall and notices there are things growing on it. He realizes it is moss and it is growing from the water that's dripping. He doesn't know if the moss is edible, but he realizes he must eat to survive and eats it. The taste of the moss disgusts Pyle Wall, but his body is fine and he sees that it is edible. He continues eating the moss as he sweats and says he will do whatever it takes to survive. Pyle Wall walks around the room and calculates that it is a 9 by 9 meter square space. He hears the sound of a door and a light comes through a hole. The light hurts Pyle Wall's eyes, but a strange person drops a plate on the room. Pyle Wall rushes to the food and realizes several people are involved in his capture because several types of food are on his plate. He realizes other people might be trapped underground and wonders what his abductor's goal is. He eats the food, saying he has plenty of time to think about his situation. Pyle Wall says the leftovers he was served are better than the moss he eats to survive. He then drops the plate and licks his lips. Pyle Wall works out in his cell and says he has been trapped for at least 4 months. The strange people provide food once a day but never say a word to him. He gets angry as he says the people keep him imprisoned but falls to the ground. Pyle Wall thought he would go insane from being trapped but chose not to waste his time. He can see his surroundings a little and he sees the strange insects that move around. He wonders how they live without light, and a strange creature moves in the darkness. A white snake emerges, wraps around Pyle Wall's hand and bites him. Pyle Wall screams as he is in pain from the snake bite and his entire body feels like it's on fire. The snake injected him with venom and he clenches his hand in pain. He lies on the floor but the door opens and a strange man drops food for him. Pyle Wall rushes to the food and grabs the plate as he says he won't die. He eats the food as the snake watches him in the darkness. Pyle Wall sits and leans on the wall as he can see the snake. He is able to see things better than before he was bitten and says he would have died by the snake bite. Something strange happened in his body and Pyle Wall extends his hand to the snake. He He has heard stories of people who become stronger after surviving being poisoned and says he can gain a weapon by gaining resistance. The snake bites him again and his body feels like it's on fire. The snake's eyes have degenerated from the darkness, but it is an exceptional hunter. Pyle Wall says they are the only intelligent creatures in the room and it slithers away. He survives the venom but feels a strange vibration and realizes the door opened. Pyle Wall leaves the room and realizes the next room is 20 steps away. He smells rotten flesh and sees a corpse in a room. He continues walking and gets to a large door. Pyle Wall opens the door as the bolts have been removed and sees two strange people in the room. Pyle Wall sees a boy and a girl in a room and continues walking. He sees more corpses in different rooms and the girl named So Yi Wol asks him who he is. She says she and Song Chon Woo are the only survivors in that section. Pyle Wall realizes they can't see and he is the only one who adapted to the darkness. He introduces himself and says he was trapped in a different section. They realize there are more sections and Yo Wol introduces herself and Chon Woo. Pyle Wall asks Yo Wol and Chon Woo to follow him and says there are more places like the one they are in. They see another door and Yo Wol instructs Chon Woo to hold her hand as they walk. Pyle Wall opens the door and they see more children on the other side. He realizes there aren't many people who died of starvation and the corpses committed suicide. He sees more bowls and food in a cell than where he was and wonders if the abductors were discriminating. He wonders why they will be discriminating in management between sections. Yo Wol calls Pyle Wall and introduces the other children. They continue walking and reach a large door at the end of the tunnel. Pyle Wall opens the door and a bright light blinds them. They scream in pain, but Pyle Wall realizes they are still underground. They walk through the strange buildings they see, and Pyle Wall realizes they were made in a rush. Lee Min talks to Pyle Wall and asks if his eyes were like that from birth. She says they are beautiful and are faintly red when a torch is nearby. Lee Min realizes that Pyle Wall doesn't know about his red eyes, and she says he is different from the others. She says everyone is confused, but he is the only one thinking straight. Yo Wol meets them and says the other kids have decided to stick together. She asks Pyle Wall and Lee Min if they are coming with them, and Pyle Wall doesn't give a positive answer. He says he'll see how things are before joining them, and Lee Min decides to join them. Pyle Wall says the kids aren't in their right senses because they've been isolated for long and decided to watch from afar. The kids begin forming groups shortly after seeing each other. So Yo Wol leads a group with Chon Woo, Kang Il leads a group, Yo Miljung leads another group, while Go Young-san is the head of the last group. Pyle Wall remains alone and doesn't join a group. People begin to gossip about Pyle Wall and say he might have been liked by the people in his section because he is the only one survivor. Pyle Wall says the world is the same wherever he goes, and he walks to the wall of the cave. Pyle Wall is sure that the building is new, but the moss in the wall reveals that the underground space was built a long time ago. Pyle Wall says the person who built the cave is wealthy because an ordinary person cannot afford to build it. The kids suddenly see the light from the ceiling and a basket descends. They see food in the basket and prepare to eat it, but Yo Wol stops them and says they should share it equally. The leaders of the group gather, but Pyle Wall says he wants to take his share. Pyle Wall puts his hand in the basket, but Yo Miljung stops him. He says the food is under their control, but Pyle Wall attacks and takes him down while puncturing his eye. He asks Yo Miljung to repeat himself as the others say he is insane, and Yo Wol calms him. She says he has done enough and assures him that no one will touch his food. Pyle Wall takes his food and watches as the others eat. He realizes the children will become enemies as the strange people try to filter them. Yo Wol meets Pyle Wall and says he made everyone his enemy. Pyle Wall says her group has become the biggest and admits that he observes them. He says she stands out among the leaders, and he says he is comfortable being alone. The basket emerges from the ceiling, and the leaders prepare to share the food. They see that the quantity has drastically reduced, and Pyle Wall says it has started. A young boy named Mak No Sam was the smallest in So Yo Wol's group, and he was suddenly found dead. Pyle Wall says he died because he was the weakest, and Yo Wol says they must take revenge on the person who killed him. The weakest in Go Young-san's group is found dead, and Pyle Wall says a war had begun. Children died every night from each group, and they began to distrust each other. They became as savage as demons from the starvation. Pyle goes deep into the cave and eats the moss. He says he never gets used to its taste, and the starved children haven't come that far. He realizes his peace will soon end and sees that 4 children have arrived. Yom Il-jung walks with 3 kids, and one says he is sure they are in the right place. He says he saw Pyle move that way, and Yom Il-jung gets angry. He has killed 2 people after his fight with Pyle and plans on taking revenge. The kids move through the darkness as they search for Pyle, and one of them gets bitten by the snake. He falls to the ground and dies, but one of the kids is suddenly abducted. Yom Il-jung gets angry as he asks Pyle where he is, and Pyle emerges from the shadows and grabs the 3rd kid. Pyle kills the kid and dodges Yom Il-jung as he attacks. He prepares to attack Yom Il-jung from the shadows, but Yom Il-jung begins to panic as he is scared and suggests they work together. He says he will become his underling and is useful, unlike the other kids that he killed, but Pyle refuses, saying Yom Il-jung will betray him in the future. Pyle bends down and leaps up while hitting Yom Il-jung's jaw. He grabs Yom Il-jung's neck and begins strangling him as he wraps around him, and Yom Il-jung begs for mercy. Yom Il-jung falls to the ground and dies, and Pyle paths. He is killing Yom Il-jung because he is still very weak and needs to become stronger. Pyle walks away and disappears in the darkness. Yom Il-jung's group is disbanded because he and his confidants are found dead. Yo-wol realizes Pyle killed Yom and his men, and the leaders of the groups wonder how strong he is. Yo-wol continues thinking as she wonders how he was able to defeat 4 people on his own. Kang-il says Pyle is cunning and spiteful, and Go Young-san says he would not want Pyle to be his enemy. He realizes they'll have to kill people in order to secure food because of how small it is. Go Young-san says Pyle is terrifying and instructs his people not to approach him or do anything to him. A boy runs to Young-san and tells him about the kids at the Red House. He says they were banished from So Yo-wol's group and have a potato. The other kids get excited, but Young-san reluctantly agrees to retrieve the potato from the kids. He instructs the kids to get ready and make their way to the red building. They arrive at the building, and Young-san's kids see as the others are about to eat the potato. They get furious and rush at the kids to take it from them, but Young-san cannot stop them. The kids run as the others pursue them, and Go Young-san realizes something is wrong. He says they are at a disadvantage due to their position, and one of the kids whistles. Several other kids emerge from the building and attack Young-san's group. Young-san realizes it is a trap and instructs his group to retreat, but Yo-wol's group surrounds him. Yo-wol says they have caught a big fish with a single potato and can drastically reduce the number of mouths to feed. Young-san gets angry but talks to Yo-wol and asks if she will be satisfied with only his life. Yo-wol says she'd like to listen to his request, but they must reduce the number of people they're feeding. Yo-wol tells Young-san he'd do the same if he were in her position, and she instructs her group to kill them. The kids attack Young-san and his group with their sticks and kill them. Pyle watches what happens and realizes what is going on. He realizes that the building exists and the persons who constructed it want them to get accustomed to it. He then realizes that the people are training them to become assassins. Some kids from Yo-wol's group talk about the people they have killed and laugh about it. They say their boss is the best and no one will dare to mess with them because of her. Then they fantasize about her and continue discussing. Lee Min sits alone and says she still smells the blood from the dead children. She sees that the other kids are accustomed to being murderers, and she wonders how they can eat after taking someone else's life. She says they are disgusting and begins to cry. The ceiling opens and the kids are happy because they are getting food sooner than usual. Yo-wol says they can eat to their satisfaction and sees that Pyle has a wary expression. Chon-woo exclaims in shock and they see several ninjas swoop down from the ceiling. They beat the kids into submission, and Pyle decides to endure it so he won't draw attention to himself. 3 strange men wearing masks emerge, and Pyle realizes they are the ones commanding the ninjas. The leader of the men stops the ninjas and say the kids can call him First Sword. He says their lives are his and he will manage them. A boy yells angrily, but a ninja beheads him and all the kids are shocked. First Sword says he has not permitted them to open their mouths, and Pyle Wool stares at him in anger. First Sword talks about cursed poisons and says poisonous organisms are put in a jar. The organisms eat each other until only one is left, which is considered the cursed poison. First Sword talks to his assistant and asks which of the children is worth paying attention to. The assistant says Yo Wool's influence on the kids is the greatest, and she will become a problem if they don't crush her spirit. He instructs the assistant to grant her special attention so she wouldn't dream of a rebellion. He instructs the assistant to pay attention to Pyle Wool for being the sole survivor of Sector 1 and its difficult conditions. First Sword pulls out a scroll and wonders why his captain accepted the task. He realizes they have 6 more years and says they have to perform an assassination without any trace to the Blood Phantom group. The end. Thank you for watching. Check out these other videos and make sure to subscribe and tap the bell to be notified about our latest videos. See you next time.